Hey everybody, it's Todd Nauck, and it's time for part 3 of this Wolverine Hulk Avengers plus X-Men sketch cover. Now this is going to be a bit different than my previous Copic illustrations because of the sketch cover glossy stock. After I started work on this, I realized that this is one of the few covers. There's a number of sketch covers that have a glossy stock. Anything that's pre-Marvel Now, the Marvel Now sketch covers, those tend to be good. Deadpool #1, Uncanny Avengers #1, those can be kind of iffy, but anything later, any of the stuff more recently, those are going to have good cover stocks to illustrate on. The ones prior, some can be pretty glossy, some can be really challenging, like Secret Invasion is probably the most challenging. So considering that, I had to change up my technique just a little bit, my color choices, because they're going to show up lighter than what I intended. And also they don't absorb into the paper, they kind of sit on top of the paper, so they kind of push around a little bit like watercolor. So as you can see here, I start with a shade of blue I thought would be appropriate, found out it was going too light, so I had to move up to a darker shade of blue. So considering this, I had to keep in mind how the colors are going to fit or apply to the paper, I should say, and how they're going to blend as well. So that was a major challenge in approaching this, and I didn't really realize that I was going to encounter this challenge until after I had gotten through the inking stage. That when it came to colors, I was going to have to kind of change up my approach once I got into that. But I could still have fun and still work with it because I've done sketch covers like this at conventions a number of times, so I was familiar with the slicker, more glossy texture to the cover. So I was able to kind of work around that, and it wouldn't, hold me up or destroy the entirety of the piece. I could adapt, and that's one of the things we have to do as artists. Is when we encounter a challenge, how are we going to adapt? What choices are we going to make, and what have we learned from previous experiences? So I've been able to employ that with this, and consider it kind of more of almost along the lines of a watercolor type of illustration, in a sense. Not exactly like watercolor, but because the color kind of moves around on the board, the ink moves around on the board, or the sketch cover here, because of the cover stock. I approached it with that sort of mindset, that mentality. So as you've seen here, I've been laying in my base colors. I come in with a pretty medium to lighter shade of whichever color is I needed for the costume, like the yellow or the blue, or even for the black here, I'm doing a neutral, I believe it's a neutral gray as a base. Then I come in with a slightly darker color for the shading, and I use the white of the paper as a highlight. So I've been sculpting out with the color, leaving a white portion of the board as a highlight of where I believe the light is coming from, which is kind of up and to the left for the most part. So with the Hulk here, the greens became a really big challenge, and so I'm coming in with a really light shade of green here as my base, and I'm going to be doing a lot of layering, and I'm going to utilize several different shades of green to render out the Hulk, to find that kind of shaping and lighting and coloring and texturing, a lot of those things kind of coming into mind. So, but right now, just putting in that initial base shade, and as you can see, even with this one shade of green, I'm still layering the color and to darken it up in spots. Just using that same green and going over the green that I've already laid down gives me an extra layer of color. Actually, here I've switched over to, I believe, what is a YG45 here for this level of shading. So it can create a nice texture for the sculpting of the muscles and the different planes of the Hulk's figure, especially with his arms coming forward and the foreshortening there, using those darker colors to create the shadows, to create depth. So it's really just a matter of really, that's one thing I really enjoy about working with the Copics is that you can layer the color, layering different shades on top of other shades of color, and you get a different look, almost a third sort of color, and it's they blend really well, and they're not going to infect the tips of the previous marker, which previous marker's color. I know with old marker sets I used to use, I was always careful with the yellow. I didn't want to get the yellow tip close to red, because once I got red in the tip of the yellow, totally jacked up the marker, and it was that yellow was always the most vulnerable because it's such a light shade. But with the Copic markers, one, they you really just don't have that problem at all, and you can blend a yellow into a red, and you're not going to get red ink up into your yellow, the tip of your yellow marker. And if for some reason you do, the tips are replaceable, so you can just put in a new tip and you're good. Sometimes the tips wear out, and because I use mine fairly frequently, so it's nice to know that I can just replace a tip and not have to buy a whole new marker. And so here I'm coming in to do the background. I'm going to do a gradation of warm grays, starting with the darkest, a warm 6, and put in a layer of that, then come up with a warm 5, then up to a warm 4, and progressively getting lighter as I go to the top of the page to really just help these characters pop. I mean, with the blue and the green, those are cooler colors, so I wanted a warmer color to contrast. And you can see right there at the knuckle that the markers really kind of got really kind of blendy. The ink was really flowing there on the slickness of this board, and I really had to push it around like I would with watercolor. So those watercolor skills came in handy. And this is not typical for working on sketch covers. Now that I know that the good ones to work with are most any of the Marvel Now covers. The DC does a great cover stock for their sketch covers now that they're in the sketch cover game. Smaller publishers, independent publishers, you got to be very careful and mindful of the type of texture of the board, and you can just feel it now. You can feel if it feels real slick and glossy. That can be dangerous. I like a smooth. Now, don't confuse slick and for smooth. I like a smooth texture to the board, but if it feels like there's a gloss to it, and I can start to tell when I put the pencil, and especially when I put down the marker inks, the pen inks, that it's going to be a challenging cover to work with. But you just make do, and you have fun with it, and you're going to learn something when you encounter those challenges. And coming in with yet another shade of green here to give the Hulk a little more pop. I thought he just needed a bit more color to really kind of give him some standout color. So I'm layering some a lighter shade of green up in there. Coming in with a little, believe a little bit lighter of a blue to blend the darker shade of blue in with the white of the highlights. So this is almost reverse of what I usually do, which is put in a light color, then come in and shade with a darker color. Because of the slickness of the board, and I can move the color around when the ink of the light blue reacts to the darker shade of blue, it almost reactivates it. So it then creates this kind of an interesting blending effect, which I usually don't get when I work on the Bristol board, like the Strathmore or Canson Bristol boards that y'all have seen me do illustrations on previous videos. So coming in with a little bit darker shade of yellow here, and a YR27 just to put a few more shading spots here on Wolverine, just to give him a little more pop. And heading into the home stretch here. Thanks for joining me for this video. Like I said, it was a bit more challenging because of the cover stock, but that's the fun thing about with art, is you're going to learn new things as you try and experiment, and you're going to discover new ways of approaching problems. Hope you enjoyed what I posted, and I'll see y'all again real soon. Thanks.